What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle. I'm recording this on Sunday night. It'll probably be out either late Monday or early Tuesday. But we're going to be continuing my 32-team projection series. We're going to be looking at the Kansas City Chiefs in today's video. I just uploaded the Denver Broncos, so if you guys want to check that one out. But we're moving through the AFC West. After the Chiefs, I'll have 6 more videos to do. So we're trying to pump this out and be done this week. And then all of August, we can, start doing just more routine, data studies and article reviews and training camp news and things like that, a bunch of live mock drafts and stuff. So trying to pump these out. And if you guys want to check out the full playlist, I'll probably put that in the comment section for you. But let's get into it. What I usually do to start these videos off is I'll do a 2023 review and kind of just share what's changing or what's new and kind of look at that to see what's setting up for 2024. So we'll start here with the 2023 defending champions. They went 11-6 last year, and honestly, it wasn't great. Last year was one of the worst passing seasons from Mahomes here. If I just kind of zoom in, last year, Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, and at the top of the coaching column here, but 635 passing attempts, 66.3% completion. That's kind of on par with what we've seen with Andy Reid's teams the last handful of seasons. But the passing yards, it's the lowest it's been going back to 2018 with 4,383. And also the yards per attempt was the lowest it's been since that time. Probably longer, but 6.9 yards per attempt, only 28 passing touchdowns. That's the fewest it's been since pre-Mahomes. And then it's also the most interceptions that it's been with in Mahomes' seasons. So overall, not the most efficient passing offense. You had Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, and then a bunch of junk at the receiver positions. It does look like Pacheco offers a nice outlet as a receiver, and he is the primary rusher now. But as a whole last year, this offense just did not have the receiver firepower that we're accustomed to. Watson, MVS, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Mecole Hardman, Richie James, Justin Ross. Just none of these guys could step up and be consistent. And it was all Kelce, it was all Rice, and all Pacheco. So they leaned heavily on those guys and made the best of it. Pacheco especially was fantastic in stretches throughout the year, but 205 carries, just under 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4.56 yards per carry, and he was a great receiving outlet for Patrick Mahomes. Not so much in the yards per catch department, but 44 receptions on 49 targets, 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. Surprisingly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was still a good receiving back on small volume, but he had a nice couple big plays as a receiving weapon, and he was the RB2 last year. We just didn't see Jerick McKinnon stay healthy at all. And honestly, the lack of a running back depth could be an issue for the Chiefs. And then receiver-wise, I mean, we already touched on it. It was all Rashee Rice last year, nothing really consistent from the rest of the guys. And then Kelce slowed down a little bit. We're starting to see him come off the field a little bit more with his snap counts. Noah Gray looked fine as a backup tight end. He could be the future heir for Kansas City there. I don't know if that's going to happen, though. I think he's in the last year of his deal. But overall, just looking at the regular season numbers, I mean, they ran the ball. It was one of the worst rushing attacks that the Chiefs have had in the last 4 or 5 years. 417 attempts, about 1,800 yards, 9 touchdowns. That's definitely the fewest that I've recorded since back to 2017. And then the 4.28 yards per carry. Again, this was one of the worst statistical seasons for the Chiefs offense under Pat Mahomes, and they still found a way to win the Super Bowl. A lot of that, could also be part of the defense being really, really good. Even if we look at like total yards as a team, 6,167. That's the fewest that I've recorded from the Chiefs going back to 2017. So that should excite you. Like, you should get excited about drafting Chiefs players this year because they had a bad year last year. The numbers indicate that, hey, things are going back up. They did a lot of work, bringing in Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown. You have Pacheco getting a year better. You have Travis Kelce still doing some things. They also added a tight end there that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I think this Chiefs offense, the floor is in. We want to be investing in these guys. Again, they just won the Super Bowl, and they had the worst statistical season of Patrick Mahomes' career. So that should get us excited. That's enough for the 2023 review. Let's dive into the 2024 projections, and we'll start at quarterback with Pat Mahomes here. I have Pat Mahomes going for 620 passing attempts. He had 597 last year, and about 4,590 yards. He had just under 4,200 last year. So I have that increasing by almost a full game and a half. 32 passing touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Last year he was at 27 and 14. Again, we mentioned these are both lows and highs of his career. And then he's always been a good runner. I have him at 355 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. he didn't run for a single rushing touchdown last year, and that's a pretty big outlier for his career. 4 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns. Like, he just runs for touchdowns. And the fact that he had 0 last year, he's going to get some bouncing back his way this year. So Mahomes, I see a full-on rebound effect with just the bonus firepower that they've added at receiver and Travis Kelce. And I think Mahomes is, last I looked on DraftKings, he was the favorite to win MVP this year. So if you're looking for a fantasy quarterback, man, just circle Pat Mahomes. I have him as my QB4 in my numbers right now. He's closer to QB3, though. So if you want to take him as the third quarterback off the board, I'd say do it. He's got as good a chance just as anyone to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns and just run away with the league this year. So draft Mahomes. I think he's one of the best, safest bets in all of football this year to put up a monster year. So Carson Wentz is the backup. I don't need to say anything about Carson Wentz, but I'm pretty excited about the passing game, and we'll get to the receivers, but we'll talk about the running backs next, and that is led by Isiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Deneric Prince, Keontae Ingram, and the rugby star Luis Rees-Zammit. Zamet, I don't know. But this is all Pacheco. They don't have a clear RB2. I have been seeing Deneric Prince getting the reps with the ones as the primary backup here. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire might officially be done. He might have to move on and get bounced around, but it looks like Edwards and Prince Helaire, Prince Fresh of Bel Air. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Deneric Prince are going to be competing for that RB2 duties. Right now, Prince is in the lead. But let's talk about Pacheco, who I thought looked fantastic last year. He did get dinged up towards the end, but he came back and played strong throughout the playoffs. 240 rushing attempts for me, 1,100 yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, and I have him growing as a receiver this year, 50 catches, 60 targets, about 335 yards and 2 touchdowns. He is one of my favorite running backs to take just because I want to be attached to this passing offense. If you do miss on Mahomes, I think you want to try and get Pacheco on your team. They usually kind of go in the same – well, it depends on what format you're playing in, but look for Pacheco, look for Mahomes. That's what's going to stir this whole offense. And I just think Pacheco's got a chance to be a top 5 running back this year. I think he's a lock for top 10 with his volume. And just, again, the lack of depth at RB2, man, we might see a stud RB season here, vintage like Kareem Hunt type stuff. And I don't know. All my alarms and sensors are going off for Pacheco having a really good year. I don't really care to discuss Edwards-Helaire, Deneric Prince. I'm taking shots on Deneric Prince late in best ball drafts right now, but I don't trust it. They could be a team that easily, picks up a Samaje Perine if he's cut or something like that to back up Pacheco. So keep an eye out for that. They might actually be a team that adds another running back here, but I just don't want to waste any time telling you guys about Edwards-Helaire and Deneric Prince. Let's just see. I have Pacheco as my RB7 on the year right now. And man, if he runs hot with touchdowns or receptions or something like that, he could finish much higher. And then when I do filter by my RB touch points, which it assigns a value of like 0.62 points per carry and 1.5 something points per target, Pacheco does come out as my RB10. So I fully expect Pacheco to be a top 10 running back this year. And he's one of my favorite targets at the position. Let's move on to the wide receiver portion here. That's led by Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown, and Xavier Worthy. And then we got some guys here that are just still trying to make the team, but Watson, Tony, Sky Moore. There's another guy here, Nico Remigio, who's been making some plays with the ones. I might have to add him to this list, but for now, I'm not expecting a Rashee Rice suspension. It sounds like that could get pushed off. So I've kind of elevated him back to wide receiver 1 status. Marquise Brown going to be the number 2 receiver. I think he might actually, be on the field the most in terms of snap counts. And then Worthy is going to be the clear number 3 receiver on this team, and he should be out there in all 3 wide receiver sets. So this might be the best 3 wide receiver set that Mahomes has had in his career. So let's look at Rashee Rice. I have Rice going for 76 catches, 110 targets, 875 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Again, if he's suspended, I'll tweak my numbers later, but I still think he's a really valuable wide receiver 3 for your fantasy roster this year. You can put him in your flex, and if he ends up playing like a top 20 receiver, that's not going to surprise me. So I think he's a value for where he's being drafted right now. And if people are still concerned about a suspension when your draft is happening, take Rashee Rice. I think it's looking pretty optimistic for him. That's what all the reports are saying. And then Marquise Brown, I think he is going to be a boom-bust player. This is the best QB that he's been able to play with. He's played with some good ones, though, Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. But just in the Mahomes offense, I think he's going to be getting a lot of easy layups and a lot of deep balls his way that will be the most accurate passes that he's been catching. So I have him as a nice wide receiver 3 flex value, 68 catches, 105 targets, 845 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's going to be the big play guy for this offense. They can all make big plays, but I think Marquise Brown's going to supply the most like 20-plus yard plays. And then Xavier Worthy, I don't know if I want to draft him in redraft leagues or anything like that. I think he's a best ball player for me this first rookie year. I expect him to kind of do some gadgety type stuff, get him the ball quick in space. He might even do some punt return duty stuff too, which is exciting. But I think he's going to strike a lot of big plays in this offense with that speed. So 55 receptions, 90 targets, 725 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think he's going to be a fun player to keep an eye on in dynasty league formats. I think 2025 is when we start talking a little bit more about Xavier Worthy. I want to see how this 3 wide receiver set splits, but it's arguably the best trio of receivers that Mahomes has had to throw the ball to. In terms of where I have these guys ranked, let me just make sure I got my filters correct here. Now, they're all kind of lower on my list. Like I got Rice at wide receiver 38. So again, I mentioned he's a solid wide receiver 3 option for you. I do have Marquise Brown at wide receiver 43, which he's like a flex 4th guy, first guy off your bench. And then Worthy's down here a little bit, wide receiver 59 next to Christian Watson and a couple other guys. So just a big play guy that I think is better in best ball, but he's still going to have some moments here. I just don't know if I want to spend a redraft pick on Worthy. Try and get Rice, if not, get Brown. But honestly, man, I think the best way to do this is to just get Mahomes, and then you're getting everything with this team. If you don't get Pacheco, get Mahomes, because it's just going to all come back to Mahomes. And then I don't need to really talk about Tony, Sky Moore, Justin Watson. If we're talking about those guys this year, something went wrong to the 3 above. So we'll see there. But let's finish up with the tight ends. It's Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, and Jared Wiley. They spent, I think, a 4th or a 5th round pick on Jared Wiley, and he's been making plays with the ones in camp. I actually picked him up in one of my dynasty leagues after the draft because no one drafted him. He looks really good. I don't think Noah Gray's coming back with the team unless he signs a small deal. But I think there's an opportunity for Wiley to be the starting tight end in a year or 2 for the Chiefs. But it's still all Travis Kelce for 2024. I have him at 85 catches, 115 targets, 915 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Last year, I have his numbers regressing from last year. I have more touchdowns, but the other stats coming down just a little bit. It's Travis Kelce, man. I'm gonna ride Travis Kelce until the wheels come off. He's still here for this year and probably 2025. So don't be afraid to draft Kelce. And he doesn't cost a 1st round pick anymore. He's more like a 3rd, 4th round pick, which I think is totally acceptable. I still have him as my tight end 1, man. I think he's still the lead favorite here to finish tight end 1. And I'm kind of expecting just a magical season from Patrick Mahomes. Maybe one of the best statistical seasons of his career. I know he had some big ones with 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns and things like that. But I'm expecting this offense to be much improved from last year. They're the favorite to go back to the Super Bowl on the AFC side of things this year. I think you want to make sure you leave your draft with a Kansas City Chief. If you can't get Pacheco, you get Mahomes. If you can't get either of those 2, you take your shots on one of the wide receivers or Travis Kelce. Try and get something from this offense because it's going to be a top 5, maybe top 3 offense in the league this year. So I'm pretty excited about the Chiefs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I want to thank you for hanging out with me and watching this video in full. I'm going to be continuing to finish up my projection series this week, but we'll do a bunch of live streams, mock drafts, and things throughout the week as well. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of the projections, and we'll see you next time. Peace.